Star Citizen's patch 322 brought with it the excitement of additional steps to the salvage gameplay loop, and a little more variety in the salvage contracts. Sometimes that means a little more risk, and a little more danger for that extra reward. So how does that play out in-game? I'm Farrister, and this gameplay video shows a salvage contract in the Vulture with a little combat threat added, albeit with some parts sped up to keep the overall length of this video down. Those parts are clearly marked as such. The crux of the contract was to take a salvage mission, but in the spirit of no free lunch, being forced to fight over the carcass of a cutlass. So, let's get into it. So, as we get started and spawn in the Vulture at the ship spawn terminal, I should probably point out if my voice is sounding a little different to usual, as it often happens in the winter months. I am suffering from a little bit of a cold, so I've tried to compensate for that as best I can, and have chosen a time when I'm least impacted, but if the voice is sounding a little bit weird, it's not your audio, it's definitely me. So we'll head down to Hangar 3 and pick up the Vulture. You'll see in the back of the ship there are already 3 crates of construction materials from the last outing. I haven't had the chance to go and sell them yet, but hopefully we'll get some more construction materials on this outing and the opportunity to get rid of those for some extra cash. So we'll start up the ship, open the hangar doors, and look for a salvage contract. At this point, I'm scrolling down the list. I'm looking for something that's probably at Mike L1 or Mike L2, just because I know they'll be fairly close by. You can see there's a 100i at Mike L2, or the Cutlass at Mike L1. For 20,000 Alpha UEC, that seems to fit the bill for me, so I'll grab that. And just as I've done that, the hangar doors are open enough for me to be able to exit the hangar. See the wonderful vista of New Babbage in the low sun as we exit the hangar. There you are, a little external view of the city and the Vulture. Lovely. So I sped up the footage here to times 12 speed just as I climb out of atmosphere. I probably should have done a steeper climb and then made it more shallow, but there's something that's just quite tempting about pointing the ship towards where you're wanting to go and letting it work itself out. Look at that, some lovely sun and shadows on Microtech. Fantastic. Right, back to times 12 as we speed up the quantum travel to Mike L1 and to the salvage target. You'll notice that I'm doing scanning pings on the way into the target. As much as anything, that's just to highlight any obstacles that I might accidentally fly into on the way in. The Vulture is not the quickest ship to decelerate, so being able to spot hazards and obstacles from far away is definitely an advantage. But we've made it here. There's our Cutlass, illuminated by the lights of the Vulture. That's our salvage target for the day. And I'm just popping into scanning mode just to see what's aboard that I might want to grab. Scanning the cargo aboard just to see if there's anything legal cargo that might be of use. And there's 2 SCU of gold. The rest I'm probably not that worried about, so I think we'll start salvaging. So because this is my first salvage video in 322, there are probably a couple of things to point out. So those that have watched older videos, the user interface has changed a little, as has the loadout on the Vulture, whereas now the second loadout is an Abrade and a tractor beam module. So I'm using this first loadout of the double cinch. It is certainly slower doing it this way than having the upgrade, but until I've actually had the chance to go and pick up a second Abrade, this is what I've got. I do quite like running the dual Abrade, so it will get swapped out eventually, but for now this is it. And we're in times 12 speed, just so that you can see that hull nice and neatly dissolving. So far so good. You can see how neat I'm trying to be as I do this. Now, one of the differences in this patch is you will more often enter a situation where there are nefarious characters about. So in this case, we've got a Drake Buccaneer who is muscling in on the action, and so we're going to have to try and defend ourselves somewhat with these two little bulldogs on the Vulture. And I'll try and remember to pick up a Call to Arms mission as well while I'm at it.
Congratulations, target is destroyed.
The Prospector was a quicker death owing to the fact that it was attacking a caterpillar at the same time. Switch back to the Buccaneer. Now clearly this isn't really what you'd want to be doing in the Vulture, but it works surprisingly well against the AI ships, and in theory, if you had the cargo space aboard and in the internal storage, you could break apart all of these wrecks as well as you're creating them. So we defended the first wave, and now there are more to clear out. The Prospectors are definitely my preferred target rather than the fighters. And I'm not sure how I feel about this combat salvage mix. I mean, clearly the Vulture is not an optimized combat platform. You've got these two bulldogs, that's just about it. Now that is enough for these smaller threats. And it was certainly interesting the first time that this happened. That said, quite a lot of the time when I'm out salvaging, I'm just hoping for a quiet time, just breaking up a hull and grabbing boxes, so I'm in two minds about when this does happen, whether it's a good thing or not. Be interested to read your thoughts in the comments. It's also quite frustrating watching myself back at how poor my aim is sometimes, but I suppose I'm a little bit out of practice with that. Right, I can't see anything on scope, so I'm going to head back to the Cutlass and give another go to the salvaging. And then, of course, shield's under attack, so there's something causing mischief again. And so I'll speed up the footage now as I deal with these additional intruders. Keep trying to go back to the salvage claim, keep having to deal with additional intruders. I suppose credit to the Drake Vulture, it is able to handle this situation with some element of kind of, it's not out of its depth, you know, for these smaller ships attacking, it's doing alright. So we'll go back into salvage mode. And the eagle-eyed amongst you might notice that this Vulture is now a single-engine Vulture. I lost it in one of those passes. So it's a little bit harder to handle, so I've suddenly got a renewed vigour with which to complete the salvage contract. So from a pure salvage perspective, one of the other changes in this most recent patch, which is a really positive change for both the Vulture and the Reclaimer, is the expansion of the internal buffer storage for these boxes. So you'll see on the bottom right, got 2.6 out of 13 SCU of storage inside before you're forced to offload those boxes. That's a real plus. It means more time in the chair doing the actual salvaging rather than having to, you know, drop down every box or two to move boxes around. It's definitely been a popular change for a lot of people, that one. Now we're back in times 12 speed, grabbing as much of the RMC as possible. I am conscious of time at this point because I really don't fancy dealing with a load of hostile targets again, especially given that I've only got one engine this time to deal with any hostiles. So just trying to get the salvage portion done as quickly as possible, including the new salvage mechanics, which we'll get to shortly. And these are the new mechanics. So we're in this fracturing mode, which I think they're described as plays like a harmonic resonance. There it is, resonating, which against a ship that has no shields or no power on, will cause it to break up into little pieces. I suppose in the same idea that if you sing at the right frequency, glass in front of you would shatter. I don't know if that actually works, but I think this is the idea behind it. We'll see. And there we go. That has completed the contract, which is good. And now I've got these larger pieces of Cutlass, and I can switch to the disintegration mode and hoover them up. Now this mode isn't quite as active as the other salvage mode. You pretty much just activate your either your fracturing mode or disintegration mode and then hover over the thing that you want to grab. You could, if you wanted to, because the Vulture has got the tractor beam equipped, you could switch the tractor beam and manipulate things with the tractor beam, but I find, especially in a situation like this, the internal buffer means I want to avoid grabbing the big piece until I've offloaded the boxes and created some room for it. So I'm actually just going around one by one, hoovering them up, just so that I know I don't accidentally disintegrate that larger piece, because just as before, if your buffer is full and you're salvaging, those materials are lost, and I don't want to lose the biggest potential part of this ship. Nice external view there, watching all the little bits of Cutlass fly into the Vulture. So this type of salvage does create a different material as well. So I mentioned at the start I had, I think, 3 boxes of construction materials in the back. Most salvagers from previous patches will be familiar with the RMC, the recycled material composite, I think it is, and that's the stuff you get from scraping the hull. That's still there, so everything that we were doing at the start of this contract is still that RMC, but this stuff is different. These are construction materials, so it's a different type of material. They are slightly less valuable in the current patch, but actually, despite having like marginally less value, they're a lot easier to get. So you end up with kind of more for your time, I think is how I would describe it. So you can see the readout there of how that 13 SCU of internal storage is, and we'll go back to the usual box juggling exercises of the Vulture. The difference here is that we've obviously got more in the internal buffer, so you're able to do more of this juggling work at the same time. I always find the first box seems to take longer to come out than the others, but maybe that's just me. So with that first box out, now loading up all the cargo, and then head back up to the cockpit, and we'll disintegrate that last piece. So you can see I've got a warning message on the lower right, and the whole silhouette is in orange because it says taking this stuff on is more than you can store within the ship, and that's because the target has 11 SCU and I already have 2.4 SCU aboard, so I will lose 0.4 SCU. I'm cool with that. I'm alright with that. I can handle that. But I could have avoided that by offloading another box downstairs. I was just conscious of time and don't want something else to show up here that I have to deal with. So that's the salvage, fracturing and disintegration. I'm just going to check and see if these boxes are just visual. I think they're just visual glitches that are left over, in which case I will leave them there. Yeah, I think we're going to leave this one there. And then we'll set a course for the Mike L1 station. That's to do some repairs. I mentioned earlier, I actually lost the second engine on the Vulture in that combat pass. It's making it a little bit more difficult to fly, and so my thought is when I go to sell this cargo, I would quite like to have both engines before doing so. In terms of selling the two elements, so the RMC still sells at all the places that you used to be able to sell it to, so the scrapyards and the TDD type places. The construction materials tend to go to places that would buy like the admin centers, that sort of a place, rather than the TDD. So if you have got construction materials on board, look for the admin center type place. At this point I'm just waiting for all of the repairs to happen to the ship so that I can get airborne again. I can see in the ship's heads-up display that I'm back to having 2 engines. That's the right number of engines for a Vulture.
You are clear to launch.
And open the rear doors before gingerly leaving the hangar. I always find this quite difficult when you've flown in forwards and you don't even know if the hangar doors are open before you have to get up and set back. And I know you could just do it in third person view, but I like to do my flying in first person. Even just like a reversing camera would be helpful, or a mirror on the other wall would be helpful, although they don't particularly work very well, I suppose. I suspect that's not a problem that faces a majority of people, though. I think most people would just go to third person, but not me. Alright, so we're going to head to Microtech to sell up these goods. Now, I have got a lot of stuff in the internal buffer storage on the Vulture. So I'm going to drop out of quantum travel and actually just organise my boxes so that I've got everything laid out in the back of the Vulture. Now, this stuff here isn't on the cargo grid, so it's not quite as stable or secure as the rest of it, but I think it's not an uncommon thing for Vulture owners to do this, is load up the physical space rather than just the cargo grid to get the most out of that storage available. And at this point, my game crashed, so I've had to reload in, and I'm hoping that all of my cargo and everything like that is okay in the back of the ship. It does happen sometimes, it's not a frequent occurrence for me, but I did get a game crash. And thankfully, when I logged back in, I was still in the pilot's chair, on the way to sell up. So for selling the RMC, I've actually chosen to go to the Devlin Scrap and Salvage. Now that might be quite surprising to a lot of you, especially given that these locations can sometimes be a bit of a hotbed for player activity. I'm definitely playing a risk here, but I thought this would be quicker than heading to the surface of Microtech to go to New Babbage to sell up, and I know I want to be back in space once I'm done, so I'm going to head to Devlin and I'm just going to be on the lookout. Got my eyes peeled, and if I see someone, I'm just going to leave.
Quantum drive is now off.
And then just use the toggle quantum drive mode to make sure you're flying to the right sort of area, down for a landing, open the doors, and go and sell up. So there you can see you've got the RMC at the top and you've got the construction materials down below. The RMC in itself is more than enough to cover the cost of the contract. I've got 18 SCU of construction materials, which again is as the wind blows me over, is a welcome boost to the profits. Incidentally, this is one of the things that I really value about the Vulture, is when you're going somewhere to buy or sell, and it might be somewhere that's maybe a little bit more risky, the fact that you can, if you want to, get on and off the ship through the ladder in the cockpit rather than being forced to open the cargo bay is actually really neat. I think it's a big plus for the Vulture. At least when you can get the ladder to work in the way that you would like. Thank goodness for low gravity. But yeah, this door is a fantastic, fantastic feature. Well done, Drake. So now all we've got in the back are those construction materials, so we'll get out of here and go to sell them up. We'll head to Microtech. Just going to do some rejuggling in the back. And then to Port Tressler, where I'll be storing the ship. Come in for a nice nighttime landing, set her down, and head to sell up. So I've stored the ship. Now for these construction materials, you'll want to head to these admin centers. And as you select the ship, you will see I've got a lot that is in no demand. And that's quite a common thing at the moment, just because everybody is trying to sell their construction materials. So it's not unusual. If that happens, just try a different admin center or come back later. If you enjoyed this gameplay video, please press that like button to let me know I should make more like it. And if you're not yet subscribed, given that you've got this far, you probably want to do that too to be shown more like this. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.